Recording Academy, MIDI instruments.
Everyone, in today's video, this lesson is all about recording with MIDI instruments. Now, when it comes to keyboards, whatever sort of keyboard you decide to use, not every keyboard has a USB port on it. This Casio Privia is meant to be it's a weighted keyed piano. It's fun to play, especially when you're trying to recreate the sound or the feeling of a grand piano. But most MIDI instruments out there, this is the M Audio Oxygen 25, super affordable. You can find this thing used for like 40 or 50 bucks at Guitar Center. This held up pretty okay over the years. But as soon as you get into MIDI instruments, a whole world of possibilities opens up to you. The way this one is plugged in is just with a standard USB connection. So there's nothing crazy about it. This USB cable essentially goes straight to my laptop. And then I have a sustain pedal plugged in. Make sure whatever audio interface you're using is compatible with your MIDI controller of choice. If you don't have a USB port on whatever keyboard you're using, if you do have MIDI in or MIDI out, you can get an M Audio MIDI adapter. It's called a MIDI audio interface. It can work in addition to your Scarlett 2i2. You don't have to have just one plugged in at a time, but the MIDI basically is an adapter, MIDI to USB adapter. You can find those online as well if you need to. So when I'm using the Casio Privia, it does not have a USB port. I have to use that MIDI to USB adapter. All right. To set it up with PreSonus Studio One, you simply want to go to Studio One at the top and then select Preferences. On these tabs at the top, you want to go to External Devices. So we're going to set up our keyboard for recording. It's important to note that whatever M Audio or MIDI, they call them MIDI interfaces, whatever one you're using, it should work in addition to whatever audio interface you have plugged in. So you don't have to unplug your Scarlett 2i2, keep it plugged in, and then just plug in your USB keyboard. So external device, we're going to go to this button that says Add. And then this is kind of confusing. If you're recording drums, like electronic drums, or you're using pads, anything like that, 9 times out of 10, you need to keep new keyboard selected. Even though it's electronic drums, we have electronic drums at our church, we have a Roland kit, you have to select new keyboard because even though you think of it as an instrument, keyboard is what is gonna help all the software programs notice that it is an instrument. I don't know why, but just select new keyboard. The manufacturer, you can go and name this whatever you want to. I'm gonna name this M Audio because that's the person that makes this keyboard. Device name, this is whatever you want to recognize as your device. I'm gonna call this one Oxygen 25 because that's the model of this keyboard. I'm gonna have all the MIDI channels selected, make sure that they're in blue. Then where it says receive from, this is where are you getting the information from? When I hit this keyboard, how does the computer know what I'm hitting? I'm gonna select Oxygen 25. If you have a MIDI, like one of those M Audio adapters I was talking about, the receive from should have the name of whatever manufacturer you're using for your MIDI adapter. So it may say like M Audio, I think it's Uno device, UNO. All right, for the rest of these, I'm not gonna hit any of those filters. Now the send to function is mainly if you have sounds built into your keyboard. So this Casio Privia has its own built-in audio samples and noises that you can produce. This M Audio Oxygen 25 is strictly a MIDI controller. It doesn't have any built-in sounds of its own. You can still select send to, that would be fine, just in case you have stuff that you want to load later. I don't have any of these other things selected other than you can make it your default instrument input. Just make sure it's powered on, plugged in before you open up Studio One. You'll get a bunch of error messages if you don't. Okay, everything else looks good to me. I'm just gonna hit the OK button. And as you can see, now we have our M Audio Oxygen 25. You should have your keyboard set up and connected. Then we're just gonna click OK. So that is the setup process for having whatever controller you're using available to you. Now comes the fun part. So I'm gonna open up the Browse tab. I'm gonna navigate to where we have instruments. And let's try to use some of the built-in instruments that come with PreSonus Studio One. One of my favorite ones that I've used over the years is called Presence from PreSonus. If you don't have this installed, just go up to Studio One Installation, and make sure you go through and install whatever instruments you plan on using. And go ahead and exit out of this, hopefully. Okay, so I'm gonna take presence right here and I'm just gonna click and drag it to where it creates a new track for me. Let me go ahead and close this. As you can see, there's a new instrument track called presence. And if I simply just hit anything on the keyboard, you can see this orange light lighting up. That's telling me that it is receiving every note that I'm hitting on the keyboard. Okay, click the little keyboard icon on this track and it'll open up the presence window. This is where we can go in and edit the sounds that we're recording with. I highly recommend if you're just getting started off, use as many presets as possible and then you can tweak them from there. So I'm gonna open up the artist instruments, which I mentioned during the installation process. I really like the artist stuff. And for this song, I don't wanna go too crazy, but let's go with strings. Strings are pretty safe. We can go with pizzicato strings. Let's try that out. So as soon as I click pizzicato strings, you can notice things changed on the screen, but also what changed is now we've loaded some samples that it can make use of. So if I hit any of these keys, pretty good. As far as this goes, the main things I want to call your attention to on presence are the velocity and the volume. Okay, volume is pretty loud. It pretty much always puts it right up at the top. So I usually take this and I turn it down to about -6 at least. They'll give you a little bit more headroom so it's not just blasting your eardrum. If you're on a filter, it's pretty common to use a high pass filter on some of these instruments. Just simply click where it says filter so it will light up. And then you can move the cutoff knob. So if I play this at the same time, and roll this down, you can hear it's getting darker and darker. I find that most of these virtual instruments, if you have some of the more affordable ones, if it sounds kind of cheap, I highly recommend you just throw on a filter, roll off some of the high end, because the high end detail is really where we can distinguish whether something is pristine or not. All right, simply from there, there's other options you can mess with, like the transpose function. So if you're playing a D chord and you want it to sound like a C, you can simply go to the transpose and move it down -2. And then it will transpose everything for you. There's also some effects built in, modulation, delay, reverb. I'm not gonna use any of those in this lesson today. Velocity may come in handy if you really wanna have a controlled sound. You need to turn the velocity down. The velocity is gonna be how much dynamic range is available to you as you're playing your instrument. But I think that's pretty good for now. I'm gonna go into maybe a chorus and just record a little bit. Essentially, MIDI works the same way that audio does. I'm gonna hit the record button. It is on record enable. I can close the browse tab here. Make sure I got my click track turned on and turn off auto punch. We're gonna start on measure 22 and I'm just gonna play a little bit during the chorus so we get a feel for this. Words are my shore, how could I as rich as I ever want more? Where I come from, where I come from, just a dirt road near the backwoods when the deer stand in a front porch, just a boat ride when the water's right and the fish caught on my hook, that sunrise when it hits her eyes and she gives me that old look. I know that I've already won where I come from. Okay, let's take a listen back to that. Some more volume here. Just a dirt road near the backwoods when the deer stand in a front porch, just a boat ride when the water's right and the fish caught on my hook, that sunrise when it hits her eyes and she gives me that old look. I know that I've already won where I come. Okay, had to crank it up quite a bit. I've got my headphone knob turned up quite a bit. So on the volume knob here, again, I'm looking at the fader for this instrument and I need to be getting around -12 or -18 just for me to be able to hear it above all the other instruments. So if I hit play here, we'll solo it. Okay, the thing about this that I don't like is it needs to be like an octave higher. It's just a little too muddy. It's a little too dark for what it needs to be. So I'm gonna double click anywhere in this MIDI region. And now we have what's called the MIDI or the MIDI editor, okay? So these are all MIDI notes. Instead of them being waves like we have with an audio or an analog signal, we have these blocks. One thing about these blocks is that they can be manipulated. We can change them after the fact and it'll change what we're hearing. So as you can see, these two notes here are not exactly on the beat where they're supposed to be. So one of the things you'll do commonly with MIDI instruments is you can select all of these little blobs, little blue blobs here. And if I have all of them selected and highlighted, if I hit Q on my keyboard, we're going to quantize these MIDI notes so they'll snap onto the grid where they're supposed to go. So I'm just going to hit Q and let's see what happens. As soon as I do, you can see everything is now snapped to the grid. So it fixes some of the timing mistakes that we've had before. You may have to go in and nudge, like some of these got moved a little bit too far ahead. But for the most part, this is going to help you get everything in time where it is supposed to be. Everything else looks pretty decent. Don't say anything too egregious. Now, like I said before, the octave was too low. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna select all of these MIDI notes, and I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna click and drag from this D. I'm gonna click and drag up and shift it up an entire octave. So now let's take a listen to this. It's like brutal on the ears, but let's take a listen to it in context of the rest of the mix. Okay, don't like the sound of that, but I hope you learned something from the pizzicato stuff. Let's go to a regular string sound. Let's say I want to change this from this pizzicato strings. I'm gonna go something, so section strings. Let's try that. All right, that's a lot more mellow, a lot more believable. So I can go ahead and delete this section here. Let me go ahead and record this chorus again now that we've got section strings set up. Get my sustain pedal in place. Here we go. Words are my shore. How could I, as rich as I ever want more? Where I come from, where I come from, just a dirt road backwards when you stay, just a boat ride. Okay, it's pretty dramatic there, but much more mellow, much more believable. If I hit the space bar, let's take a listen to this chorus. All right, let's say I want to recreate that again. So I'm going to select all of these MIDI notes and we need to quantize them. This time I want to quantize to the nearest eighth note. So right here at the top where it has quantize, make sure you've got 1/8 selected. So now when I hit Q, it'll shift everything to the closest eighth note. I can see that one's pretty egregious. So move this over. Quick glance, everything looks okay. All right, so now that it is perfectly on the grid, I can tighten this up. I'm gonna cinch up this MIDI region right here so it starts right on the downbeat of the chorus. And then I want this to end on the downbeat of that verse. I can select this whole area. I'll right click and go to copy. And then I'm gonna go over here to chorus 2. I'm gonna hit Command V. I'll paste it. So now we've got this going here. Not only that, but we need the outro to be extended. So I can go in, zoom in right here. I'm gonna use the slice tool. So if you hit 3 on your keyboard, you'll go to the split tool, or you wanna make a cut. The reason I'm gonna make a cut is because I wanna duplicate this track. So I hit 3 on the keyboard, I made a cut, I just clicked right here. So now we have 2 separate MIDI regions. You can see them right here. I wanna duplicate this one. So now if I hit D with this MIDI region selected, and now duplicate just that area. If I'd done it before and I'd hit D, it would duplicate the whole thing over. Don't want to do that. Command Z to undo any of your mistakes. Many other videos here on my channel other than the Recording Academy, but make sure you check the playlist for Recording Academy for more lessons as they're being uploaded. YouTube is recommending this video just over my shoulder, so give that one a watch and I'll see you at the next video.